It's a fallacy to think that, oh, men just want heartless sex. They don't.
No.
Men are extremely emotional. Some studies say that men actually feel love even to a greater capacity than women. But because they feel it so much, they're scared of it, So then on the other end, as women, we're like, where are the men pursuing us? They're not asking me out. They just want situationships. They don't even come up to me anymore. Like I was telling you at the gym, I was like, I don't have guys come up to me. Also because of AirPods.
Yeah.
That it's like, I'm on an AirPod, they're on an AirPod. So it's like, as a guy, I can imagine that's extremely nerve-wracking. Some girl might be listening to a podcast. She might be listening to this right now. He's not going to be like, hey, pretty lady, take off those AirPods. I'm going to ask you out on a dinner that I can't even afford. So that's happening on top of that. Then the women are like, where are the men? Where are the conscious, empowered men? I'm just going to keep improving myself. It must be because I'm not a high-value woman enough. So I'm just going to keep reading about myself, improving myself, glowing up, up-loving, making more money, being more successful, all of these things. Now the bar is higher, where there are very few men who can let alone meet you, let alone surpass you. There is this core biological need for women, and it's maybe something we need to relook at and visit, that we want a man to make more money than us. So then if, let's say the average female income is 60,000, average man is, and I don't know exactly what it is, I know it's a little bit less, let's say it's 55 or whatever it is. And I think it's separating even more. Well, there's just going to be less and less men on top of that, men who are doing inner work and this and that. So then women are told this dream of, well, if you just become good enough, this magical man will appear. And he is embodied and he is conscious and he is an alpha man and he gives you princess treatment, but he listens to you and he can read your thoughts and, but has his own big mission and, like all these things. And it's like, you're just thinking, just improve yourself enough and here he'll come like fucking Santa Claus. And so then when men do approach them, they're like, ew, you're not Jason Momoa.
Exactly.
Back off. And then men feel rejected, so they don't reject. And then we have this massive divide that you see ourselves in right now. So where do we get started here?
There's so many things. The common thread that you just said, though, is that men feel resentment and anger. And then the woman who says, I'm just going to glow up and work on myself, she rises and rises in her energy and capacity, then she's resentful. So then there's this disconnection between what they want and who they are and an inability to communicate. And this searching for the one, instead of searching for someone, or not even searching for, but recognizing who shows up in the field and choosing someone rather than looking for the one. And that's the thing. Any relationship is a continual choosing. And as soon as that choice stops being made and it goes on autopilot, that's where the relationship is basically, it goes off the rails.
Here's what I find as a woman, that many men are just choosing to not be in a relationship.
They're not, yeah. Because like you said, there's all this access to the quick release, the quick fix, and then devaluing of not only themselves, but of women. And so then women feel, I can say from what I know I've felt before, is that there's this massive gap. There's a chasm. And so might as well, same thing, I'm just going to focus and do what I want to do. And that's not something that our previous generations faced or dealt with. So how we deal with this is essential, because how we deal with this, resolve this, and then potentially have children and birth the next generation and raise the next generation is massively consequential. So our massive increase in awareness of all of these things increases our responsibility to do something with them. So I think that's why we're having this conversation right now, is what do we do with this massive increase in awareness and this shifting of power? So like you were talking about how men have felt this shifting of power and they want things to go back to the way they were. There is some value to the masculine leadership and the feminine receptivity and openness. And then the shadow of that is if a woman's fully in her receptivity and openness, then she's not self-sufficient. So she's completely dependent on the man. So if the man says, does, believes, goes. So where's her value? Where's her sovereignty? Where's her choice? Where's her unique experience? It gets funneled into... And then that's where then the resentment happens in relationship, not just out of relationship. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thread that...
And then we often pendulum shift, that you experience, a relationship where the woman is extremely receptive, but she's completely dependent on you financially. And then you're like, I don't want that because it's extremely burdensome for me. It's hard enough for me to be able to pay my own bills and survive, and then plus my wants and travel and all the things, let alone someone else's and their lifestyle. So then maybe they'll go for the super independent woman who has everything done and da-da-da. And then they're like, well, now I don't have that same partnership anymore, or she doesn't, have as much time for me. And I find, and as women too, we keep oscillating between extremes. And even societally, I feel like our parents' generation was very like, you get married till death do you part, you don't question it. And now the youth today are like, I don't know, I don't like how you tied your shoes.
Yeah,
I got the ick. Yeah.
I got the ick.
And it's like crazy, it's like we are now looking for any excuse to not be in relationship. And so I think it's the question to ask ourselves, and it's one I continue to ask myself, is what do I even want a relationship for?
I think this is the conversation you and I have had the most outside of this one.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many different ways into it, but we're living in a hyper-individualized society, especially now. Because previously, if it's like I was talking with grandparents with World War II, there was a sense of community and there was a cultural sense of bonding together, but that's where the family unit became so strong. And then same thing in the 50s, the family unit was so strong, but that's where the rise of the feminist movement started to separate and pull the woman away from the nuclear family unit. And then the education system started to pull the children away from the family unit to indoctrinate and re-educate the children based on very, very shallow education principles that create robotic cogs in the machine. So that is where that family unit started to get broken apart. So we're now experiencing the end result of the breaking apart of the nuclear family, which in some ways is tragic, but it also gives us an opportunity to recreate that in a new way. Yet you and I, our generation, have to go through this hyper-individualism, especially in America. Like when I lived in Germany, it was kind of there, but they looked at America and again, they were like, wow, the hero, what an amazing, glamorous place to live. So many cultures think that this is the place, but to actually be here and live here, it's massively isolating. It's massively disorienting. And so then we're left hyper-independent with this great opportunity, but massively unfulfilled, which I think the going back to the resentment, but deeper than that resentment and anger, when you're talking about like the Andrew Tate red pill movement, the anger that they're speaking to, what that does is it's keeping men and confirming that level of consciousness is true, that that's authentic, that that's real. And yes, it is, and it needs to be acknowledged. However, what transitions us out of lower emotions and into higher emotions is courage. So it takes the courage to say, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to leave this relationship. I'm going to leave operating with my family in a way that keeps me safe in their eyes, that keeps me good in their eyes, that keeps me loved. Because we don't want to do something that's going to then potentially mean love is withheld. So we stay in these lower emotions of fear, grief, apathy, which is doing nothing, and hatred is actually the same emotion. So we get stuck there, but courage, and I think most people listening to this podcast have made that shift into courage, but we still feel these lower emotions circling and swirling all around us culturally and in our relationships, and that's why we're doing the work. But courage is that emotion that shifts us into higher emotions. That's where then we can access surrender, acceptance, joy, peace, love, unconditional love, and then enlightenment. And enlightenment is, for me, it's not something that I'm striving to live all the time, but it's being able to feel that fully when it does come, feeling the joy fully when it does come, knowing that I'm going to strive for unconditional love, but I have massive amounts of conditions with myself, how I treat myself, that limit how unconditionally I can love someone else. So that to me is where the propaganda and the attention some people gain and the influence some people gain by speaking to these lower emotions of anger and fear and hatred, politics, obviously, right? That's hatred. and fear, separation, it creates a ginormous amount of energy and attention. And however, once that shift is made into courage, that's where we start living.